if CNN was, a lot of their sponsorship came from something like GM or Ford, they probably wouldn't run an article or run a piece that was saying GM or Ford is bad. So I think that yeah, that's the largest difference is the transparency in which the censorship occurs. But I mean, at the same time, as you can probably tell if you've read the media here, one of American journalists' favorite things to do is bash our politics or our politicians. So I think you see less of that, but there is definitely, I wouldn't preach American media as being completely free of all censorship, and I think that any form of media is going to have censorship, whether it's on the very personal level or whether it's on the grander scale. And I think that, I mean, maybe that's one of the difficulties facing journalism today is that just as you move towards online journalism or with blogs and everything like this, it's becoming increasingly difficult to get a neutral standpoint. And I mean, I think that's a challenge that we'll face as time goes on.
Were you over there during the Olympics? I think it was like during the early stages of the Olympics when I think the mother of the U.S. Women's volleyball coach was murdered.
Oh, actually, it was the father. It was the father, and actually, he's from my hometown, Minneapolis, and he owned a large flower shop.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? Was there any pressure to not report that? I mean, did you guys report on that?
I mean, that wasn't really. I mean, that wasn't my department, and I don't know. I'm not sure how that was handled. I believe we.
Yeah, our newspaper reported that incident on the same day.
I do recall seeing it in there, but that would be your department. Yeah, right. Good question.
What kind of sports do they got down there?
Well, they're big into soccer and table tennis, as you mentioned. Man, I tried. They have table tennis outside everywhere you go. There's parks, and people love to play. And I stepped down one day just to try my hand, and I'm not very good at it. And I got thrashed, to say the least. But they have soccer's very big. There was some American football, but I mean, not very much. I think soccer is the biggest thing, and I played soccer while I was there. And actually, well, just to touch on an interesting story and an interesting issue in America today, I ended up playing soccer with a bunch of British guys, and it was almost like a mini World Cup. We were playing 5-a-side, meaning 5v5. And during that time, I went up to get a header, and I ended up just smashing faces with another Chinese guy. And I got 9 stitches right here. And just to touch like an idea of how the healthcare system works there, I ended up having to get those 9 stitches. I had a CAT scan, antibiotics, and a tetanus shot, and it ended up with no insurance costing me a little less than $100 US. I mean, I'm not sure why that difference is. I don't understand. But I mean, it was the healthcare was, and they did a good job. I mean, it held up fine, and is far cheaper than you would ever find in the United States. I mean, I thought that was interesting.
Among your team, did you come across anything about the Hong Kong, Singapore bank and problems with the banking system?
No. I've heard briefly of that, but no, I didn't.
But the reason I mention it is because our credit cards, for example, General Motors credit card, the banking is Hong Kong, Singapore.
Really? Did you know more about this? Talking about the Hong Kong, Singapore bank, I guess GM's credit cards are based with them? No, I didn't know that. No. It's a good question. No, I'm sorry. I don't have any information on that. Sure.
I'm curious what the outlook on journalism and specifically the newspaper business is in China. I was just reading an article, I believe, in Time that talked about how newspapers are flourishing in Japan right now. They're just popping up everywhere. The average family, I think, is subscribed to 2 newspapers, whereas now in the U.S., newspapers are dropping like flies, it seems.
Yeah.
What's the attitude toward newspapers in China? How are they doing, business-wise?
Business-wise. Well, maybe he can help say.
Okay, just as what Todd said just now, the Chinese newspapers are more dependent on advertisement to support their future development, and now even for government-funded media, the government is cutting funding for the media, so more media will depend on themselves to develop.
I also think it's worth mentioning, I read and talked to, there were several journalists from India there, and India is another largely like expanding market in terms of media. I think, and now don't quote me on this, but I think there was some statistic I read where China and India were two of the fastest growing media markets. But I didn't know this about Japan, and that's worth looking into. Interesting. Thanks for the question. Is there any others?
Well, thank you very much. And I'm actually surprised to, when Todd came back, I did notice the cut on his forehead, but he never mentioned it. I never found it. Now today I found out the reason and what happened to him. He never told me that, so it's something new today. But thank you all very much for coming. And if you want to stay around a little bit for coffee, for cookie, you're welcome to do